My name is Evelyn Carter. I am 39 years old and I live in Savannah, Georgia, where I work as a corporate attorney. I never imagined my own family would turn against me in ways that cut deeper than any blade. I had always believed that loyalty was a family bond that held through every storm. I thought love meant honesty even when the truth hurt. All that changed the day I discovered my brother had siphoned our inheritance, and my husband had hidden his own debts from me. The rain tapped against the church windows like a warning drum. I sat in the front pew clutching my son Leo's hand. He was 10 years old, and he did not know what betrayal looked like yet. I barely heard the Reverend's opening prayer that morning. My mind raced with the memory of last week's revelation. I had found the bank statement by accident. It was hidden at the back of my husband's desk drawer inside a worn leather folder. The totals made no sense until I saw the name of the offshore account. The number was enough to erase our savings and leave me with nothing. I remembered the moment. I realized it was real. I stood in our master bedroom with the folder in my shaking hands. The sun had set, but the sky still held a glow of steel blue. I felt the air thicken. My heart pounded like a runaway train. I could taste the bitterness of betrayal on my tongue. A flashback came unbidden. It was 2 years earlier when my brother had begged me to co-sign a loan for his failing business. I had signed the papers with a sense of pride in our family bond. I trusted him to never use it against me. Now I understood the true cost of that trust. I replayed the conversation in my head. He had sounded desperate. He had promised to pay me back with interest to prove his gratitude. I had believed him because he was my brother. The next morning, I drove to the bank and spoke with a teller who recognized me. She hesitated before handing me a printout of the account activity. The numbers confirmed my worst fears. My inheritance was gone. I walked away without a word. The rain started as mist then grew into heavy knocks on my windshield. I felt as though the sky was grieving with me. Back in the church, I saw the edge of the wooden box resting on a small table by the aisle. I remembered how Marcus's attorney had slid it across the desk the week before. That moment had been chillingly calm. Mr. Carter had looked me in the eye and said he was following Marcus's last instructions. He had told me I would know how to use the contents best. I nodded, though my mind was already racing toward a plan. The air inside the church felt too warm against the chill of the windows. My son Leo fiddled with a small toy car my husband had given him on his last birthday. He did not know the car was paid for by the money my brother had stolen. Every breath felt heavy. My hands left tiny wet prints on the pew. I counted the seconds until the silence after the organ note would shatter. In that silence, I made a silent vow. I would let Marcus speak through this last calculated gesture. I would use every word and every truth to reclaim what was mine and protect what remained of my family. Sudden thunder rolled outside. I closed my eyes and felt the weight of every lie pressing down on me. Then I opened them and prepared for the next moment when betrayal would become my weapon. The organ's last note died away and a heavy silence settled over the church. I opened my eyes and saw Vivian Sinclair halfway down the aisle. She wore a blood-red dress and her heels clicked with deliberate pace. My breath caught in my throat. Vivian was my husband's longtime mistress. She had no right to be here. Yet she came forward as though she owned the day. Vivian walked to the front with her back straight and her chin lifted. The pastor's prayer stalled in his throat. He glanced at her and then at me. His eyes held questions he dared not speak. Vivian stopped beside the small table holding the wooden box. Her fingers curled around the edge of the lid. I felt the muscles in my jaw tighten. My son Leo looked up at me, his eyes wide and confused. Vivian spoke in a clear voice that carried to every corner of the room. She declared that he never loved me, Evelyn, and that he stayed only for his son. A gasp rippled through the congregation. Agnes, my mother, pressed a hand to her mouth. The pastor cleared his throat but did not interrupt. I remained seated and watched her. I had rehearsed this moment in my head 100 times, but I did not expect the sight of her here to feel like a physical blow. My hands gripped Leo's small fingers. I could feel his heart beating fast. In that moment, a flashback came, rushing in. It was 3 weeks earlier in our master bathroom. I had found my husband's phone buzzing with another message from Vivian. He had confessed his unhappiness in our marriage and his desire for freedom. He had begged forgiveness and asked for one last night together. I remembered tracing the raindrops on the window as I read his words. The cool glass under my fingertips contrasted with the fire of betrayal in my chest. I had closed the door on his pleas and vowed to protect my son and my future. Back in the church, Vivian lifted the lid of the wooden box. Her triumphant smile spread across her face. She lifted a photograph and held it high as if she had won a prize. The congregation leaned forward in anticipation. Time slowed. I watched Vivian examine the edges of the photo with faint disbelief. My heart thundered. The photo was his final message. It held the truth he wanted unleashed in this public moment. Vivian's smile faltered. A shadow passed over her features. Her hand shook. I rose from the pew and met her gaze across the aisle. My mother sat frozen. The pastor stood with his mouth open. Leo clutched my skirt. Vivian opened her mouth as though to scream, but no sound came out. She dropped the photo and the box clattered on the stone floor. Her eyes met mine, and in them I saw triumph shatter into panic. She turned and fled down the aisle, heels clicking faster now with fear instead of confidence. The congregation sat in stunned silence. The rain on the windows seemed to hush as though waiting for the next breath. I did not follow her. I stayed by Leo and let the truth stand on its own. The box lay open and empty between us. I felt the weight of every lie lift from my shoulders. In that moment, I realized that the weapon of betrayal had become the key to my freedom. A storm had broken, and in its wake, a quiet calm settled inside me. My next step would be to gather every document, every account, every contract that had been manipulated. I would confront my brother and my husband with the full weight of my resolve. The path ahead would be hard, but I would walk it with my head held high. A final flash of lightning lit the stained glass and painted the church in shards of color. I squeezed Leo's hand and stood tall. The funeral had unearthed my own rebirth, and nothing would ever be the same again. I left the church in a quiet daze. The stained glass painted my skin in fragments of color as I stepped outside. The rain had slowed to a drizzle. I held Leo close and felt the weight of what was coming next. The following morning, I arrived at the family estate. The front door stood ajar as though it sensed my purpose. Inside, the foyer smelled of old leather and dust. My brother Aaron waited by the grand staircase. His face went pale when he saw me. He said he did not know how it had happened. He said he thought the accounts were safe. He pleaded that I forgive him for any mistake. I watched his chest rise and fall in nervous rhythm. I unfolded the bank printout on the mahogany table. The numbers glowed under the antique lamp. I said that every cent of our inheritance had vanished into an offshore account. I said that trust was the price I paid for his deceit. My brother swallowed hard. He tried to shift the blame to bad advice from his advisor. He claimed he had planned to repay the money by year-end. I pressed the printout closer to him. I said that promises in writing reserved no mercy in court. He backed away like I had shoved him. His voice wavered as he promised to return the funds. I nodded, though I knew recovery would require legal action and public record. Aaron placed a tentative hand on my arm. He said he was still family and that these matters were tearing him apart. I felt his breath on my skin, and I remembered the boy who once shared my birthday cake. I wanted to believe him, but I kept my resolve. An unexpected Allie stepped forward. Rachel Cole, my colleague from the firm, had followed me there. She wore a calm expression and carried a folder of documents. She said she had uncovered matching withdrawals in her own investigation. She said she was ready to stand with me. Seeing Rachel gave me new strength. I said we would file a joint motion for inquiry and freeze the assets immediately. My brother's gaze shifted from fear to anger. He said I was betraying the family. I said I was protecting my future. That evening, I confronted Marcus at his downtown office. The city lights flickered through the glass walls. He stood behind his desk as though it were a shield. He said he was sorry for all the pain. He said he had only hidden the debts to shield me from worry. I closed the distance between us. I said that deception had cost me my dignity and our son's security. I said that his failure to trust me hurt more than any amount of money. He tried to reach for my hand. He said we could repair this together. He said our family could heal if I would just trust him again. I stepped back and shook my head. I said that trust must be earned and that words without truth were worthless. In that moment, the office felt colder than the church. The glow of the city below mocked our broken bond. I turned and walked away without a backward glance. At home, I sat with Leo and felt the first stirrings of relief. The confrontations had left bruises on my spirit, but they also cleared the air. I knew the path ahead would involve court hearings and negotiations. I knew there would be more attempts to sway me with guilt or pity. But I also knew I had my brother on notice and my husband on watch, and I had Rachel at my side. The storm was far from over. Yet for the first time in weeks, I exhaled and tasted hope. I sat across from my brother Aaron in a glass conference room. The city lights felt cold through the windows. He looked smaller than he had in childhood photos. He said he would return the money. He said bad advice had led him astray. He offered to sell his share of the family home. He looked at Rachel for support. I placed a folder of statements on the table. I said I had already frozen the offshore account. I said every transaction was documented. I said I would press charges if he did not comply. His face paled. He said he understood. He said he would cooperate fully. He begged me to end the public spectacle. I pressed on. I said trust was earned through truth, not apologies. I said I would not stop until the full inheritance was restored. Later that evening, my mother called. She said I was destroying the family name. She said Marcus was regretting our separation. She asked me to forgive and move on. I said forgiveness required honesty. I said I would not betray my own principles. I ended the call and felt a strange relief. 2 days later, Marcus arrived unannounced at my office. He stood in the doorway under fluorescent lights. He said he loved me. He said he had repaid his debts. He asked for a second chance. I closed my files and stood. I said that actions mattered more than words. I said I would consider his request only after he attended counseling. I watched him nod and leave without protest. The week of the court hearing arrived. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and tension. My lawyer rose and presented the evidence. The judge reviewed the documents and scheduled a full hearing. On the courthouse steps, I faced reporters and cameras. I held up the wooden box and the photograph. I said I had transferred every cent of the original inheritance into a protected trust 2 weeks before. I said the offshore account held only the funds my brother embezzled and his own confession letter. A murmur ran through the crowd. My brother put his head in his hands. Even the reporters paused their note-taking. I said I had chosen the path of justice, not revenge. I said I fought for my family by protecting its assets and its honor. Aaron approached me in the press pen. He said he was sorry. He said he would spend the rest of his life making this right. I said that restitution would begin with full transparency and public apology. Marcus stepped forward as well. He said he accepted the counseling condition. He said he wanted to rebuild trust for Leo's sake. I said that Leo deserved truth more than anything. In that moment, I sensed the shift. The power had returned to me. The lies and manipulations were exposed and rendered powerless. The storm had broken, and I stood in the calm afterward. and then a twist struck them all silent. I said that the trust I established carried my husband's name as co-trustee. I said that his final act after his death was to secure our son's future beyond any doubt. The cameras flashed. My brother and Marcus exchanged stunned looks. They realized they had been outmaneuvered. They saw that the legacy of trust and honesty would endure long after their betrayals. I walked away with Leo at my side. I felt the weight of every lie fall behind me. I felt the first taste of true freedom. The sun rose over the city the morning after the hearing, and I watched it from my office window. I felt a lightness I had not known in months. I reviewed the final figures on my laptop with Rachel beside me. The trust held $1,200,000 in secure assets. It covered our home, our son's education, and a reserve for emergencies. I closed the file and felt satisfaction. Every manipulated contract, every hidden account, and every forged signature had been exposed. Every account had been reconciled. Every debt had been repaid. My brother's public apology ran in the morning news. He admitted his wrongdoing and agreed to community service at the local charity my mother had founded. He said he hoped to rebuild what he broke. My husband joined me in a private session with Marcus Family Counsel and a licensed therapist. He shared the pain his secrets had caused. He took responsibility and asked for trust to be earned step by step. I stood firm and set clear boundaries. I said that trust was rebuilt by consistent truth. I said that our son deserved transparency above all. He nodded and agreed to every condition. Outside the office, I greeted Leo as he finished his piano lesson. He ran into my arms and said he was proud of me. I held him and felt tears of relief. I knew I was teaching him by example. That evening, I hosted a small dinner at the family home. The table glowed under soft lamps and smelled of fresh basil and roasted vegetables. My mother joined us. She offered a heartfelt toast to new beginnings. I raised my glass and said that family was not defined by blood alone, but by honesty and mutual respect. I said that loyalty was earned in actions, not words. Later, I sat alone on the porch as twilight settled. I reflected on every confrontation, every flashback, every storm that had raged inside me. I saw how each moment had shaped my resolve. I understood that true power came not from vengeance but from justice. I saw that forgiveness was a gift we give ourselves. I felt gratitude for the ally who stood by me and for the son who gave me purpose. My journey had redefined my idea of family. It was a circle of trust that must be guarded and tended. It was a promise to protect those we love by speaking truth when it mattered most. I closed my eyes and breathed in the night air. I felt free. I felt whole. What would you do if your own family betrayed you and you had the chance to reclaim your life by speaking the truth? 6 months passed since the courtroom steps. I settled into a new rhythm that felt both fragile and strong. Each morning I woke before dawn. I brewed coffee and watched the sunrise from my kitchen window. The light cast long shadows across the hardwood floors. I found peace in the silence. Leo walked to school with me each day. He chattered about friends and homework. I listened without judgment. I let his laughter fill the spaces that once held tension. At the firm, I launched a practice, focused on family trust and estate law. I met with clients who faced betrayal of their own. I guided them through contracts and safe harbors. I turned my pain into purpose. Rachel became my partner. We built the firm on principles of transparency and respect. We hired staff who shared our vision. Our office smelled of fresh paper and promise. My brother Aaron attended every community service session. He cleaned the grounds of the charity my mother founded. He wore a simple uniform and worked without complaint. He said each act of service helped him heal. My mother visited often. She watched me and Leo in our new home on Oak Street. She said she was proud of how I rebuilt my life. I said that pride was earned by every honest choice. Marcus and I met for coffee 3 times a week. We sat at a small table by the window. He updated me on his progress in counseling. He shared insights he gained about his own patterns. I listened and I asked questions. I watched him learn humility. I watched him earn small victories in trust. I kept my boundaries firm and my heart open. One afternoon, I led a workshop for young lawyers. I spoke about the power of truth. I shared my story without naming names. I described the weight of silence and the freedom of revelation. The room stayed silent after I finished. Then hands went up. They asked how to navigate loyalty and ethics. They asked how to protect families from hidden threats. I answered with clarity born of experience. After the workshop, I walked alone to the riverfront. The water flowed steady and sure. I let the sound fill my chest. I thought of every confrontation I faced. I thought of every flashback that stung. I realized that I had transformed betrayal into a blueprint for justice. I had turned every lie into evidence. I had turned every tear into resolve. That evening, I tucked Leo into bed. He held my hand and said he dreamed of helping people like I did. I kissed his forehead and whispered that he already did. I returned downstairs and opened my journal. I wrote about trust and renewal. I wrote about the legacy I wanted to leave for Leo. I wrote about the love that rose from ashes of deceit. Closed the journal and looked at the framed photograph on my desk. It showed me standing with Rachel and Leo at our firm opening. We wore broad smiles and held a ribbon. I smiled back at myself. I saw strength and compassion in my own eyes. I saw a woman who refused to be defined by betrayal. A breeze stirred the curtains. I felt a quiet excitement for the future. I knew challenges would come, but I also knew I had the tools to face them. My journey was far from over. Yet for the first time, I felt truly at home within myself. Would you have the courage to rebuild your life if truth were your only weapon?